Preparing to live stream the meeting? Preparing. Faith Rogo, you have arrived, my friend. So glad to see you. Thanks for coming. Dion, so glad you're here. Stream the meeting.
Thank
Okay,
you.
welcome
Good
everyone to
evening,
the Media
everyone.
Education
Thank
Lab.
you.
We are thrilled to be talking about teaching the ethics of advertising. And we want to get right to it, but we want to acknowledge that this is a really most timely topic. And this dynamic duo is part of a research team that just published a really great article in the Journal of Advertising. And I'm hoping somebody on your team can put the link in the chat. So after this talk, you're going to want to go read that article. That's how I found out about this piece, and I really like it. I think we can't be using magazine ads to teach advertising anymore. So now what do we do? Especially now that ads are algorithmically personalized, now that platforms deliver this personalized persuasion to us, and now that the ethics of advertising has become super complex now that everyone can be an advertiser. So Cecilia and Michelle, thank you so much for agreeing to share your insights with us. And you can see in the room, we've got a bunch of great folks. If you're joining us for the first time, please know Michelle and Cecilia are going to talk for about 25, 30 minutes, and then we're going to have a robust dialogue together. So this is a great opportunity to share your reactions and interpretations to their work and to exchange best practices as well. So take it away. Michelle, Cecilia. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. We are very excited to share this research, this framework with everybody. We've been working on it for 3 years now, so we're excited that it's out in the world. This evening, the title of what we're going to be talking about is Exploring the Ethics of Actors and Systems, or EASY, Approach to Digital Advertising Literacy and Beyond. We'll do four things. First, we want to contextualize advertising literacy and like why we should study digital ads at all. Although Renee, you did framing that's already getting us into it. And then that context sets up the EASY framework that we developed, and we'll go over what we mean by EASY. And then we implemented a program using the EASY framework, and we're going to share some of the details of that program and the findings from that study, and then we have some discussion questions. First, we'll introduce ourselves. Cecilia.
Okay, thank you so much for having us. I'm Cecilia Zhou, and currently I am assistant professor in the Academy for Educational Development and Innovation in Education University of Hong Kong. But previously, I was studying in UMass Amherst in the communication department. That's why Michelle and I can collaborate on this project.
Yes, I am still at UMass Amherst. I'm a PhD candidate there. And yeah, we did this research in 2023 and 2024 when Cecilia was still here, and now she's moved on. And I think no, Erica's not in the room. Okay, just want to make sure. So this is the study. I put the link in the chat, but the bit.ly leads you to, the journal gives you like 50 free copies. So I don't know, who knows how many there are there, but if you're trying to access the article and you don't have access, you can email me and I can get you a PDF. But hopefully, I think there's still free copies via this link. But yeah, we come from a wider research team. All of our co-authors work closely with us to facilitate this program, but definitely want to shout out in particular our advisor, Erica Shar, who's a professor at UMass, and Tom Underwood, who is a grad student at University of New York, State University of New York, Albany, SUNY Albany. And now I can't remember his current affiliation.
His current affiliation, University of Hong Kong, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'll turn it over to you, Cecilia.
Right. So yeah, so I will take charge of the next kind of few slides. So first of all, when we talk about advertising literacy, the definition is that it's about consumers' belief about the tactics, intention, and strategies that are used in persuasive attempt in the context of advertising. It is like one strand of media literacy, but it is slightly different that it has a specific focus about advertising and specifically how people understand the persuasion part of advertising and whether they will act on it. So within all of the research about children's advertising literacy or advertising literacy in general, a lot of them focus on conceptual advertising literacy, which is like whether they can or cannot understand the persuasion, like this is actually advertising, what are they trying to do, and then stuff like that. So a lot of research is, even if it's like intervention, is focusing on trying to activate that conceptual advertising literacy and see what the consumers can do in the future. But in this, our framework, we focus more about the moral because there is a significant research gap and not so many practice about the moral aspect as well as the attitudinal aspect. Because I think we can go to the next slides. Because when it's transitioning from traditional advertising to digital advertising, it is a lot more embedded. So in digital advertising, we are particularly looking at, for example, the computational process of personalization, which is usually like a black box for children and for adults. Because, in our daily conversation, we'll talk to our friends and then suddenly we got this ads about sneakers or other things. And then we say, oh, the phone is spying on us. The phone is listening to us. What's that all about? So it is a very, black boxed process that people struggle to understand in terms of the datafication and personalization process. And it has significant implication for people's privacy and sense of autonomy. And then the second aspect is that we look at commercial culture, we look at influencer marketing because and we look at it specifically through the attitudinal and moral aspect of advertising literacy because influencers, they are in between the lines of entertainment and advertising, and then they don't usually clearly tell you that their videos are sponsored or this type of product is sponsored. So there is a blurring line, and then we want to see how talking about ethics, talking about morality can changes people's trust or trustworthiness. And previously in advertising literacy, when it's just focused on conceptual advertising literacy, the research has found, especially with children, that it is no longer that effective. Like children, they after the advertising literacy lesson, they will clearly, okay, they have more awareness about, okay, this is advertising, but then their action will still stay the same because they like the influencer. They, feel empathetic about this influencer. So that's why we want to study digital advertising through this like ethics approach. Okay, so next slides. Yeah, so we call our this framework called Ethics of Actors in System, and shout out to Erica who helped us to kind of consolidate this framework a little bit. So in this framework, we focus on the actors, which is the humans and non-human in the system, because our research focuses a little bit on datafication and personalization. So that kind of like technical process and all of the infrastructure involved are considered as actors in our framework. And also we focus on the ethical dilemmas. So in our framework, we don't feel like the students needs to like have the pressure to actually solve this ethical dilemma. We want to see, how they negotiate the dilemmas in the system, and then they will think about the gray area a little bit more. And third, we ask students to think critically about the system that produces digital ads rather than the content of the ads. So we move beyond the content part. We move beyond critical thinking of the content, trying to deconstruct the meanings, the ideologies behind the content. We really want them to think about the social technical system of digital advertising. So yeah, so again, we already covered a little bit, but just go into a little bit more detail. So in the not advertising, the platform system, we take a ecological approach that emphasize not only like the users and content, but also the technical part, which is the algorithms, the data, and also the political economy. So in our research, we also involve policymakers. And in the second year of our project, we actually have the opportunity to invite policymakers to talk about policymaking, especially regarding children's, privacy protection. And then in terms of the ethics, we incorporated the TARES test for ethical persuasion, I think. So if you search TARES, and then it's a big framework in the advertising world. But basically TARES is whether this is truthful, whether it's authentic, whether there's respect for people, whether it's equitable, and whether it is socially responsible. So for example, if we talk about influencer marketing or influencer content, we'll think about as an influencer, like, is the content that I'm producing is truthful or not? Am I being authentic to the audience? Am I faking it? Is this, type of ads, or is this kind of algorithm pushing all of these ads respectful for the people? For example, the ads can be pushed to different people, and then it kind of have bias. So we think about respect for the people. Is it equitable? And then whether it is socially responsible, for example, for climate, for example, for, like fast fashion and, this endless consumption, etc. So these are loosely like these two things, we combine it together. And yeah, that's about it. Yeah, thank you. And in our research for the last couple of years, we researched with local elementary school in Massachusetts. And this is because Erica has long-term relationship and with the school, and we are just like research partners. In our study, we usually have three sixth grade class, and usually it is around 50-ish students that attend this media literacy intervention. And in our study, our central question is, how might an ethics and system-based approach to advertising literacy scaffold and spur early adolescents thinking towards conceptualizing like a transformed advertising system? So we not only want to ask the students to think critically or act ethically, but we want them to also be empowered in the process, and then think about, as actors within the system themselves, what are some of the changes they can make, and what are some of the demands that users collectively can make. Okay, move on. Michelle?
Thank you. Yeah, so the easy approach, ethics, actors, systems. We needed to operationalize this for the program that we developed for these sixth graders. And so I'm gonna walk you through how we did that. I don't think it's the only way to operationalize this easy framework, and that's part of what we'd love to talk about in the second half of today's hour, is like, what are other ways that we can think about ethics, actors, and systems. But what we did is, and you can probably hear my baby crying, so I'm sorry about that, but that's just gonna be happening right now. So we wanted to set up experiences for the students to experience the ethical dilemma. So we wanted to think about interactive perspective taking activities. We chose role play, and we'll walk through the role play activities that we did put together. But we thought it was important that these ethical dilemmas were not this abstract thinking exercise, but it was something that the students could have experienced for themselves. We also thought it was important that the scenarios that we put in front of students they represented actual dilemmas that are present within the system. So we wanted to draw on like real controversies, of real things that advertisers, influencers are dealing with. And we also wanted to get really concrete about the actors and the relationships between those actors within the system. I'd say in the second year, we thought even more concretely, like we actually had students draw maps of the system. We didn't do that in the paper that we're talking about tonight. But that's something that yeah, like we're continuing to play around with. But yeah, the goal is to think of how to help students see where they and other actors can take action to transform the system. So the program, we had 4 classes with 4 class sessions with these 6th graders across 2 weeks. And week 1 was 2 lessons. We focused on personalized online ads. Week 2, we focused on influencer marketing. And it's a lot. Those are 2 very big categories of types of digital advertising to try to cover in 4 class sessions. We have reflections on that, but we did it. And both weeks kind of mirror each other. So the first day of the week, we had the role play activity where students were experiencing the ethical dilemma. And then the second class of the week, we developed activities so students could return to their own perspective and reflect on what they experienced in the role plays. We were able to like articulate some of the concepts and the scenarios that were kind of like left unsaid or just left to be experienced. Like we as the facilitators, we like made concrete the things that students were experiencing in the role play. And then we ended each day with an activity that I'll share, ask, act, hope, we say. So I want to tell you about these role play activities because they're important, I think, for understanding how we did this. So they were different each time. For personalized ads, digital ads that use user data, like behavior data, user activity, like that data, the data that platforms will collect about users. It's the ads that are personalized either in content or in like targeting that can only happen because of that user data. So the role play, for this role play, the first step was the class was divided into 4 groups, and it's about 4 students each. And each group was given 1 product card. So each group was given one of these. One was the fashion apparel group, one was the snacks group, one was the video games. And then every group got these 4 audience cards. So middle-aged men, young women, senior citizens, kids. And the first question was, okay, this is your product that you're selling. And we said, you're the CEO of a company that sells snacks. And the kids loved that. They really wanted to embody the CEO. They got really into the perspective of a CEO. And we said, okay, you're a CEO and you want to sell your snacks. Who are you going to target your ads to? And they had to decide which of these 4 audiences they would choose. And we had like a little note catcher and we asked to like justify your decision and like, and think about like what might your ad look like. Then halfway through the activity, we threw them a curveball and we handed out additional cards. And it's really small. And I apologize about that. I'll read off what it says. And it's additional data about each of the audiences. So for this one, for the middle-aged men, the additional data points they got. And Vids for You, this is it's like a fake YouTube. It's like, that's the platform they're partnering with. So they get more data on this audience. So these middle-aged men, they search for videos using search terms, how to help my teenager learn how to put on makeup. After 9, binge watches videos of people playing video games. This audience used to buy a lot of cookies, but they haven't done so lately. For young women, the extra data, they never buy makeup. Search for videos using the search terms, how to make more time in my day for exercise. Their husband used to play video games, but now they are divorced. So we kind of chose data. We're obviously trying to seed this idea of like upending expectations. And so the curveball we're throwing is, okay, we might have certain assumptions about what certain audiences would like to see, but platforms have access to a lot more data. And also, and it says at the bottom of the cards, not all of this may be accurate for everyone in this group. It's just Vids for You's best guess. And so now that the students receive this extra data about each of the audiences, we asked students to reflect on, are you going to change the audience you're targeting? And reflect on, is there anything uncomfortable about getting this additional data from students? So that was that role play. The influencer marketing role play was same thing. Class was divided into 4 groups, and we had 4 fictional influencer types, and they received this card that is a profile of a realistic influencer. This is a kidfluencer, I guess you say. And you get some audience information. You learn like your subscriber numbers, like the age of your viewers, gender breakdown, things that you would get on like an audience like data dashboard if you were an influencer. And then just some information about the type of content that you create. So you're an influencer and you're assigned a specific brand partner. In this case, this kid influencer is partnering with snacks. And we ask students to first start out thinking, okay, so this is your partner brand. Think about what kind of content you're going to create to with this partner brand in mind. And then similarly, halfway through, we threw them a curveball and we gave them an additional card that had kind of like a controversy around the partner brand. So in this case, the snacks, the videos you made promoting these snacks were effective. Research shows that your viewers, who are mostly children, are more likely to want these snacks after watching your videos. This leads to concerns from parents. They criticize your channel for only promoting unhealthy food. And so getting this curveball, we'd ask students to reflect on how are you going to address this scandal in your content? Are you going to address it? And then asking them to think about how they're going to balance their responsibilities to their audience and to their partnering brand. So those were the role plays. And those happen on the first day of each week. And then on the second day of each week, like I said, we went back over some of what they experienced in the role play. We put some vocabulary to what they experienced. We filled in some gaps. We introduced ideas of like regulation that actually protect users within the digital ecosystem, especially children. We definitely want to cover that. And each day we ended with this activity that we call Ask, Act, Hope, which we think does what every good media literacy program should do: talk about asking critical questions, reflecting on actions we can take, and reflecting on what we hope the media system will look like in the future. And so just to quickly go over our findings, and again, you can go to the academic article if you want to read more. But we did find that participating in this program, students did grow in their concerns about the ethics of especially data collection and data tracking and truthfulness of influencers. So we did find over this, and because I didn't share the data sources, but there's data sources all along the way over the 4 days, and then we had like a pre and post assessment. So that's where we're getting our data from. So students did grow in their concerns about the ethics. There was still vagueness that persisted. We found use of the words they and stalk, as in like, they're listening to us, they're stalking us. And it wasn't always clear who they was, even using context clues, like, was it the platform? Was it the advertiser? And so there's still vagueness, even though we really wanted to focus on articulating and mapping the actors and the way that the actors are in relationship with each other. There's still vagueness. Something that I think is one of the most interesting things that we found is students identified withholding attention or disengaging from digital content and platforms as a key action that users can take. And that did not come from us. We did not seed that in any way. We didn't encourage thinking like that, but really from pre-task to post-task, more students identified, I guess, as a result of experiencing these dilemmas and reflecting on them with us. The idea of withholding their attention from became a even more viable action that they would recommend. Um, we did want to seed the idea that a wide range of actors can take action within the system. But in the present, when we ask what can be done in the present, students predominantly identified actions that users should take. So there's still this emphasis on the user having responsibility to take action, a sense of responsibility that the user needs to take action. But that being said, when we ask what you hope the system will look like in the future, students hope that things are going to look pretty differently. Actually, it's going to work very differently. That data collection, there'll be limits on it, there'll be boundaries, that there'll be less ads, that content will be more truthful, and so there's a sense of, in the future, we want things to look really differently, and we want actors in the future to act differently. But reflecting on this, we think it's important to keep where we are exploring ways of trying to make that bridge in the present. So if we want the future to look very differently, okay, what actions can a wide variety of actors do in the present? So that's for future research, as they say. And that is the program. And look at that, that's exactly 30 minutes. So we have 4 discussion questions that we drafted, but wherever this conversation goes is fantastic. We'd love to hear anything that you have to say. But some things that we're just going to put out there and see if any of these resonate with you. So first of all, does anything from our findings surprise you or inspire anything? So that's our first question. The second, we're curious how you teach about the moral and ethical dimensions of media systems in your class. We're really curious about the wide range that, and also the challenges of doing this, particularly for different age groups, and thinking beyond like a good, bad binary when we're thinking about the moral and ethical aspects of this. So we're curious how you've done this in your own class, how you want to do it, and maybe like how you've tried it and maybe it didn't go like you wanted it to. And similarly, our third question is around these interactive activities like role plays. Like, how have you used these kinds of activities in your curriculum? And when you do, what tells you it's working? Because that's something that we talked a lot about. It gets a little sticky when you think about embodying certain actors within the system. Can it ever backfire? I know that's something when the students were so excited to be the CEOs and they were like really taking on the the money making motivations, and we reflected like just that experience, like, okay, how do we figure out when it's educationally useful to embody this wide variety of perspectives to be able to experience the system maybe more intimately, and maybe is there any downside to it? And then finally, this question of operationalizing the EASY framework. Are you inspired in any ways to think about using EASY in different ways? And beyond the study of advertising, we think that thinking about ethics, actors, systems, obviously applies to lots of different dimensions in the digital ecosystem, media environment, but also just more generally in the media ecosystem. So those are our questions, and I can copy and paste them into the chat perhaps, and I'll stop sharing if that makes sense.
Excellent. Wow. Fantastic and perfectly timed as well. So we invite you to turn on your camera and join our conversation. Michelle, thanks for putting the questions in to the chat for us, because I do think you're leading us on a really interesting journey. I think, I'd like to start with I'd like to start with the question that I thought was really interesting, and that's really about role playing. right? And sort of what happens when kids, role playing is fun, but role playing can also be transgressive, right? And I don't know about for 12-year-olds, but for teenagers, role playing can be super transgressive, and that can make teachers feel uncomfortable. So my question to you was like, was the role playing transgressive, or did teachers just feel uncomfortable?
That's a good question. I don't know if it was transcript. I mean, it certainly wasn't like I think it like it wasn't I don't know, to want to be the CEO and make a lot of money. That there it's not like the it's not like an original point it's not like an original motivation to come
Yeah.
to. It's like
Yeah, that's not transgressive.
yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't say there's transgressive in our like students. I think sixth graders, they're cute and they just want to take on like an evil part of like they really like try to like be like this. And then being like influencers, they're also like, oh, let's make money. And then they start to think about all of these creative ways to create the content. I think that for us, the challenge was classroom management that
Right.
like yeah, like stay on the topic, talk about ethics and
Yeah.
what is your responsibility, all of these big heavy words, and then sometimes the students will just go off rail and talk about shampoos and how your hair can look so pretty in an advertisement. So we have to like channel in the energy and then try to make something out of it. Yeah.
Fascinating. I really appreciate your observation about the activation of stereotypes. In this case, the CEO as villain stereotype, because that's kind of inadvertently happening. It wasn't something you were teaching, but you might have to deal with issues of representation as a result of learning about how students are activating those stereotypes. All right, thanks so much. Any other comments or questions? Jackie, I see you in the room. Welcome. And your microphone
Hi.
and your camera is on. What questions or comments do you have about Michelle and Cecilia's project?
It reminds me of this one of the projects we have in fourth grade that I didn't come up with, but it's been like shared amongst the technology teachers in my district. So I've kind of like taken it and like adapted it a little bit. But it's called like the Evil App Project. And it's the same kind of thing where like we learn about like different aspects of app design and how apps are designed to, keep you engaged and like different techniques that design app designers use. And so then at the end, it's like, okay, now you're an evil app designer and like make your app like so addictive, make it like so like hard to not be using. And so then, we're trying to like get them to think about those techniques that we talked about and use them to come up with, whatever app. And we're not like coding or anything. It's all just like hypothetical and they're just like kind of describing what the app does and stuff. But they do really get into that role of like being in control and trying and like, you know, I think like we do kind of come at it as like apps are designed to keep you this way. Like it's not necessarily altruistic and helpful to you. It's more about like, you're the product and your attention is the moneymaker kind of thing. But yeah, when we do give them that opportunity to like take what we've learned and, you know, go for it, just make it as awful as possible. They really do get kind of into it. And it is this interesting way of like kind of giving them awareness for these things that they experience, but having that component of like control and creation is really interesting.
I
For
think
me,
well,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go
Yeah.
ahead. No, I just
No,
want to like that's so interesting about the Evil app. I think it's I just think that what we're so you want students to really like understand the process, and then what we find I think students have difficulties understanding inference, like data inference, how the stats basically used are like predicting what you might do in the future and then loop you in. And it's not that saying that we want students to think about alternative business models that is not, attention economy, but we kind of like we try to want students to think about, what platforms should do, what influencers should do, and then whether there is ways we want to see if they can very creatively think about other ways that the system works. So in a way that our activity is kind of like by making it more transparent about who is involved in the system, we want to kind of see how students like creatively imagine an alternative digital marketing system or whatever like technical system there is.
Yeah, Jackie, when you were sharing that, I was thinking, I wonder, I mean, the audience matters so much, like who's like, I was just thinking like, okay, in a college computer science program, like, could you do that? Is there any educational benefit to going to that extreme? And at first, my knee-jerk reaction was like, I don't think so, but I don't know. I would be curious to think about that. Like, if there's like the reflection on the other side. I mean, that seems really important. It's like there's perhaps some, like what can you get out of going to the extreme and like taking on the perspective that we don't want to encourage, but if you do it for a moment and then you can reflect together, like, what did that feel like? Or I don't know, like that, the reflection seems important. And I do think we were able to do that in this program to a lesser extent. Like, it's not as extreme as, okay, you're going off in the world and you're going to be actually coding these apps. But also thinking about like, if you're like a college, if you're like a marketing student, I don't know, like, would there be any, what would it be like to craft an activity that encourages going to the extremes? I don't know. I'm curious.
Right. Well, there is a really great, a great set of scholarly work on the Get Bad News media literacy program, created by the Dutch media scholar John Ruzenbeek and Sander van Linden. And Get Bad News basically teaches you how to be a disinformation, a fake news expert. It introduces you to 6, I think, concepts that you can do to increase followers and mislead people. And I've used it with my undergrads for years, and I found that some years when debriefing is super important, like you said, Michelle, and some years the debriefing goes really well, and I'm like, yeah, it was high engagement, it was fantasy, and they learned these concepts. But other years, the reflection has revealed to me that they had a hell of a lot of fun, and they learned things that they could actually do, unfortunately. And then I'm like, I'm never going to use this. I'm never going to use this game ever again. So I feel like the jury is out on how simulations and gamification activities can be productive in addressing ethical issues. That is, the jury is still out from my point of view. Dion, Erica, Hoda, Danny, and Ari. Ari, you're an expert on marketing. I'm dying to hear your thoughts about this. Which of these questions would you like to discuss? Hoda in the chat has a great comment. I'm wondering if there were any differences in results when they had to advertise for children of their age versus populations of other ages. Oh, Hoda, what a great question. Also, did you find that the perception of advertiser influencers changed as went through the program? From excitement about being CEO to something else?
To the first question, it was interesting. Something that came up a lot, and we didn't really include in the findings, but this concern about appropriateness comes up a lot from these students. Like, is content appropriateness for young people? Like, there's really this like deep concern with 11 and 12-year-olds about encountering inappropriate content online. And that makes total sense, obviously. Like you've probably experienced it. And I think that's like the topic of lots of like digital citizenship curriculum. But that's definitely something that so yeah, in answer to that question, I would say, yeah, a concern about appropriateness for children, for child audiences really resonates as a significant ethical issue for students this age.
Nice.
I
Nice.
I want to add on because we're presenting the findings from our 2023 program, and then we reflect on our design and did it again for 2024, which is purely focused on the datafication process instead of the influencer marketing. Because our students are, 12 years old, not all of them have heavy consumptions of influencer content actually. So we just want to
Right.
focus on the personalization, and then within all like these 2 years of data collection, we see that like children, because they're 12 they're like the eldest in primary school, and then they want more protection for younger children as well, like more awareness for younger children to understand this. We ask them to make posters, and then we also they have an awareness of like again like appropriateness of the advertisement towards children. They want to be protected. And then the second year, they also, some of them really smart girl who says that, the privacy agreement for platforms are not written in child-friendly language. So they're advocating for that as well. And then the second question, the perceptions of influencers. I think they were like in the role play games, they were extremely excited to play as influencers. And I think there's one change that they become sometimes a little bit empathetic about influencers. They feel like, oh, influencers has to make money somehow. So they feel like it's, totally fine. But at the same time, they also want influencers to be truthful. So like they understand that influencers' money income come from that, and they also want the influencers to disclose whether they are sponsored or not. So yeah, there's like trying to strike a balance of the influencers. But I don't so far we haven't like it's too advanced maybe for 12-year-old, but like yeah, we want to see if children, like I said, like the platform should be better regulated to actually pay the influencers putting out the free content instead of like purely mostly relying on sponsorship. So we didn't see that, but yeah, like we want to see like, oh, maybe in the future test with different age group and see what happens. Yeah.
What a great idea. Dion, welcome to our conversation. We invite you to make a comment or ask a question. We have some people who are cooking dinner here, so they are listening in. We appreciate that.
I really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you both so much. I'm just taking things in. I was also impressed by the format that you used. I believe it was the tiers. I thought that was quite interesting as a springboard for students once they are presented with a form of advertisement, that it gives them something to really latch onto. And I like that. I feel like that would most likely be something that my students would easily engage in. And I do teach the high school level. So yes, this would be fantastic. Thank you.
Excellent comment.
I just one comment on the TARS framework. We struggled with how, because it's meant for advertisers to reflect on advertising practices. So we were kind of fitting a square peg into a round hole, thinking about, okay, how can we translate this for student users to reflect on? So I do think there's still room for manipulating that and finagling that. I do think high school, like that's like golden. I think part of what we were trying to negotiate was the age group we were working with. But if you do use that love to know how it goes and like how you do translate it for your age group because we do think there's like so much potential there to use that framework in like an education, a more general education setting.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
thinking about I was thinking about how, every student in Massachusetts has to do a civics action project and how you've got that little girl who's already wanting to rewrite the terms of service to make it kid friendly. And it's like, that's the kind of civic action project that I think would be perfect for an eighth grader. But I think a little bit challenging developmentally for a 12, 11-year-old, really, a sixth grader. So I do think experimenting with different ages is a really great suggestion. Definitely something.
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
good.
And I would also add, like, when we talk about ethics, it's like a little bit vague, and then it's like good to have the TERRAS framework, but it's would also be interesting if you can actually invite somebody from the industry to come, and then there's like a human face to their job, and then they tell the students what their day-to-day life is, and then some of the things that they struggle. So like I feel like that will make things a lot more concrete than hypothetical, and the students will not necessarily embody like evil CEO things, and then they will see more rooms of changing the system through like like inviting some guest speakers to actually talk about
Mm,
what they do in the system. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Erica, I would invite you to talk a little bit about how these are your great doctoral students and recent graduates, and they are pulling on a thread that you've been developing for a long time. It's like from your point of view, what do you see some of the most important insights and implications, and where are you hoping this line of inquiry goes in the years to come?
Yeah, it's so cool to see Cecilia and Michelle present these data and have this conversation with you all. And yeah, my mind has been bouncing all over the place with the Q&A. The role-playing thing, for instance, and transgression. I'm remembering how way back when I did media literacy work with sixth graders around media violence, critical analysis of media violence, we had them role play a children's television show or movie that had aggression in it, but had them stop before the aggressive thing and solve the problem in a different way. And that did not go well. I don't mind sharing with you. It was a terrible, terrible idea because they got all worked up and, and would pretend to punch someone and then just pull their punch at the last second. And I thought, this is bad. So speaking to your point, Renee, of how sometimes these role plays go off the rails, I think we do have to be really careful. And I think one of the things we were really trying to balance with this particular project is like, creativity and student agency, right? And the 11 and 12-year-olds coming up with their own thoughts, of course, because we always want to hear them, with the criticality, though, right? And so, we always hope that the criticality, like critique of systems, is something that comes up organically and that doesn't take a heavy hand from the instructors, right? But it's something I think that we try to balance every time, and it takes a lifetime, right, to try to get that right. I mean, that's how I feel about it. Yeah, what else would I say? It was, the idea of other, younger audiences, younger media users. I used to think of the pattern in which most age group students are not necessarily worried about media influence on themselves. They're worried about media influence on others, and especially younger others. I used to think of that as an obstacle to media literacy, and maybe it still is. But these days, I think I've come around to thinking of it as an opening, actually, like an opening of conversation about media influence. And like, okay, interesting. We talk to sixth graders. That's the grade we always work with. You don't necessarily think the media influences you, but you are worried about your younger sibling who's 2 years younger than you. Like, can we pull that thread a little bit, right? Why, right? What changes in 2 years do you think where or not, or what do you think things will be like 2 years from now when your sibling is your age, right? And so that's what I mean by an opening, right? I think sometimes we can shift these things that we might think of as defenses to and have them be, you know, the beginning of a conversation. So those are just some of the thoughts I had during.
Such a beautiful thing. Can I ask you about, so one of the things we know from the Pew study and other studies is that like every American kid wants to grow up to be an influencer.
Exactly.
It's something like 80% or something like that, right?
Exactly.
So how does this approach, address that, accommodate that, and what evidence from your work align with that reality? Or does this curriculum disrupt that that hope and dream that so many children have?
That's a great question. And Michelle and Cecilia, you should definitely jump in. What I recall is that some of the sixth graders they in fact already had social media accounts and were looking for followers, you know, so they were, they would tell us to follow them and grow their, you know, their reach. So you're right. Like for some, I think this was more instructive of like how to be an influential social media presence. And yeah, but Michelle and Cecilia, what would you say to that question?
Well, it wasn't something that we were consciously trying to build in, like trying to speak to that career ambition or not. Uh, I do think like on the role play days, we asked them to fill out exit tickets, like what questions are they leaving with? And I do recall there were a bunch of like pretty logistical questions, like how do influencers make money? How do they make more money? And like latching onto some of the fictitious data points that we had, like you make X number of dollars per video or whatever, and they would like latch onto that and be like, is that true? Is that so? I do think that probably speaks to like this interest in that as a career, like that thinking like really concretely and realistically about these things. I mean, I will say that I think students walked away from the influencer role play feeling like, wow, it's really complicated to be an influencer. Like, I think their empathy is, wow, it's really actually very hard to do this. Like, the ethical, like that, those curveball controversies, like that must be really hard to navigate. So I don't think they walked away being like, oh, that is the easy career to go into. But I don't know. That's an interesting question to probe further.
I agree with Michelle's observation. I think the students become more aware of the complexities of building this career, and they said that they didn't think, you know, at there will be like ethical issues within for influencer to think about all of these things. It seems quite like complicated, and yeah, so none of them said that they really want to be influencers. I think it's, you know, for 12-year-old, it's like one of the options that they're experimenting, and then we allow the space to experiment with that, and then, you know, once they grow up older, they will see whether this is like a valuable career. And yeah, so like in our program, I do think that they are. I don't feel like the Pew Research like, because it's quantitative, it's like it doesn't deal with all of these complexities that children are thinking about. But yeah, like that's the general feeling, is that the students are like, wow, this is very complicated, and then it's not so easy to be a influencer. Yeah.
If I could just speak to Ari's point in the chat. So the very excellent editors of the special issue of that our article is part of, in some of the revisions, pushed us to think more about policy implications of the EASY framework, and thinking like specifically they wanted us to speak to the increasing number of laws around the world that like social media bans for teens and early adolescents, and how our framework could, like, I don't know, is it like in opposition to some like a more like policy a policy solution route, or like, how does it all fit together? And I don't think we have the answer, but I do think that like the policy system is a system that we think that our easy framework could probe and could the whole point of what we're proposing is to delve deeper into the murkiness of these things. And so so we do think that probing, yeah, some of like these policy solutions, like the trade-offs that are inherent to these, like who benefits from these, who may not, like who's writing these bills, where's like who are they in conversation with, who are they not in conversation with. Like we do think that that's like a really fruitful potential area for even honestly, even I think kids this age, like I think that seventh graders could they were really interested in the policy aspect, but more in the following year. Maybe that's because we did have Senator Ed Markey zoom in, so that was part of maybe what made them excited. But yeah, I think it's
Awesome. Oh my goodness. And just think about it. In just a few more years, in 2 or 3 more years, we'll have really cool data about how policy changes at the national level impact youth media behavior. We've got a little experiment happening in Australia right now, right? With the under 16. We've got an experiment with policy going on in California and in many other countries around the world. So I do feel like I can imagine this ethics, actors, systems model being useful for analyzing not just digital advertising, but a number of related issues about media policy. And while my initial critique was, oh my God, you can't ask a 12-year-old to come up with a new business model for digital advertising. Part of me, I end this session with you guys thinking, well, but yes, maybe we can, and certainly the pedagogy has the opportunity to be broadly relevant. And Danny's pointing out in Brazil, another experiment going on. So thank you so much for being a part of this experience. In the YouTube comments, we're going to leave you some links so that you can access this material and get in contact with these fine authors. But thank you for explaining the research to us and explaining the pedagogy and inspiring us to, well, with more questions. So thanks so much for being part of it. Good night, everyone.
good night. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Renee. Really appreciate
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you,
opportunity.
Cecilia.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
you for
Erica.
hosting it.
Great. I'll send you the YouTube link tomorrow. All right.
Great,
Bye-bye.
perfect.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks
Bye.
for being part of it. Bye, Danny. Bye, Hoda. Bye.